What's going on, guys? We got a 5.3 liter truck motor here that we're going to be doing a complete teardown on, all the way down to the block. This whole engine will be a block by the end of this video, guaranteed. And you're going to see it POV style from my point of view, which means you are going to see everything as far as the detail of this motor turning into a block. I'm also going to share with you the tools you're going to need, as well as some tips and tricks of some do's and don'ts when you're tearing down an engine like this. So let's get into this. I'm going to pull this crankcase vent hose off. I'm not really worried about saving the hose, just for the simple reason that when we rebuild it, we'll put all brand new hoses on it. Okay, this hose didn't want to come off with my needle nose, so I'm just going to cut it completely off because I'm going to be lazy. And that's okay, because like I said, we're going to be replacing all these hoses. There's a total of 10 8mm bolts that hold this manifold on. All right, now let's go ahead and remove this crankshaft pulley. You're going to need a crankshaft pulley puller, or what they call here also a harmonic balancer puller set. I will put the link to this tool in the description, so check it out. Comes in a kit with a couple of these guys. Get this guy all set up. I'm going to use my pneumatic impact that you see here, because these bolts do not like to come off very easily by hand. All right, now that we got our crankshaft bolt out, we can go ahead and install our crankshaft pulley puller. We use this little rod right here to insert into the crankshaft. This is the longest rod that they have in the kit. I'll get all the teeth latched on to the crankshaft pulley. Now, as you can see here, the puller does grab onto these little grooves right here under the crank. 3/4 inch socket. There you have it, one crankshaft pulley. And then, just for the record, these bolts are torque to yield, which means you can only use them one time. You cannot reuse these. So when you go to rebuild your motor, get a brand new crankshaft pulley bolt or harmonic balancer bolt, whatever they call it at your local auto parts store. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and flip the motor over so that we can remove the oil pan. Now that we got our 14 10mm bolts, we can go ahead and remove the pan. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a rubber mallet, smack the oil pan just a little bit, just to get that oil pan gasket loose. One little tap and that's all it took. Now that I have the oil pan off, I can kind of see in here the situation that we got. This may look like, you know, dirt and debris on camera, but it's actually just, you know, casting. That when they casted this oil pan, that's actually in the casting. At first I thought it was dirt, but it's actually not. But I'll stick my finger in here, see what we got, and yeah, it's pretty gross. This thing definitely needed a rebuild. Make sure you got a nice grease rag handy. All right, now I'm going to remove the oil pan gasket, but I can't really remove the oil pan gasket because the sealant that goes in between this back cover here and the block itself is kind of stuck to it. So I'm just going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to very, very carefully pry up, get it kind of under there. Get that unstuck. Doesn't take much. I knew that this is an iron block and I could, you know, put my screwdriver on here, but don't put it on this aluminum surface, because if you damage this aluminum surface from this back cover, you will not get this to seal. Now, to remove the front timing chain cover, it's 8 10mm bolts that you see here. All right, right, now to take the pickup tube off, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the 10 13 millimeter bolts that hold on the windage tray, because they also, 2 of them hold the oil pickup tube that you see here. And then once those are loose, I can go ahead and loosen up the 10 millimeter bolt that holds the tube into our oil pump. All right, there you have it. There's our oil pickup tube out. Now I'll go ahead and remove our windage tray. There's an O-ring that seals the pickup tube to the oil pump that you see here. I'm gonna use this pick and I'm gonna gently bring it out. And as you can see here, it looks like this O-ring is in pretty good condition. Sometimes these tear, and then no oil pressure, then you can blow your motor that way. So by looking at this and seeing that it's in good condition, I know that this motor probably didn't starve from oil. So next I'm going to remove the oil pump. It's 4 10 millimeter bolts that you see here. Before I take the heads off, I'm going to go ahead and take the valley cover off. It's 10 13 millimeter bolts. We can go ahead and remove our knock sensors. These are 22 mil, but I don't have a 22 mil socket, so I'm getting away with a 7/8 socket. Cool, got our knock sensors. Now we can pull off the valley cover. Let's go ahead and remove the valve covers. It's 4 10 millimeter bolts. We're gonna have to remove our rocker arms before we can actually remove the head. So let's go ahead and start removing the rocker arms. Some of these rocker arms are under tension, like how you see here, where the spring is compressed, and I'm gonna loosen this very, very slowly, because if I loosen it up too fast, it wants to, spring up, it could possibly strip the head. So I'm gonna loosen these very slowly. These are stock valve springs, so there's not a whole lot of tension like what you would find in an aftermarket race motor. So I can go ahead and just loosen them where they are. If this was a race motor, I would actually want to relieve the tension completely off of that spring before pulling the rocker arm off. Now that we got our rocker arms off, we can go ahead and remove our push rods that you see here. All right, now we can go ahead and start removing the cylinder heads. We have 5 10 millimeter bolts that you see up top, and then we have 10 15 millimeter bolts down low. Now we can see what the pistons look like. As you can see, there's a dish on this piston right here, which indicates this is 100% a 5.3 liter engine. If these pistons were flat tops and they didn't have this little dish here, this would actually be a 4.8 liter. First, I have to get these lifter trays out. They're on each side. So once the lifter trays are out of the motor, I can go ahead and grab each one of the lifters. The lifter trays are held in by one 10mm bolt, one bolt per tray. There's a total of 4 trays in this engine. Now to get the lifters out, use some long needle nose like this. Then I'm just going to grab the lip of the lifter, and there it is. Lifter comes right out. If we were going to reuse these, I'd be paying attention of where these lifters go into their respective cylinders. But since we're definitely going to be doing a full rebuild of this engine, we're going to be using brand new lifters. And obviously once I have all these lifters out, I'm going to go ahead and thoroughly inspect them. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm going to go ahead and remove the camshaft position sensor and the crankshaft position sensor that's down here. Both of them are held by one 10mm bolt. I'm also going to remove the oil pressure sensor that is right here, located on top next to the camshaft position sensor. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the timing chain set. Once we can remove the timing chain set, we can remove the camshaft. The timing chain gear is held by 3 10mm bolts that you see here. Now that we have our timing chain and our timing chain gear off, here is the camshaft, and the camshaft is retained by this retainer plate here that is held in by 4 10mm bolts. Now to pull the camshaft out, you're going to need a tool like this right here, because this will bolt on to the camshaft here, and I can easily pull it out by hand. I'll put a link in the description for this tool. Now that I have our little handle attached to the camshaft, I can pull it out, and I'm going to pull it out very gently. As you can see, this tool makes it very, very easy. If you don't have this tool, you could probably use, I don't know, something else, but I've always used this tool and it's always made this very easy. Now there's our camshaft. All right, now that we got our camshaft out, we can go ahead and start getting ready to remove the pistons and the rods from the motor. But before we do that, I'm not sure if we want to reuse these pistons just yet, because sometimes we can still reuse them if this is just going to be a fresh rebuild, and we also want to save money. If these pistons are still good to use, I want to put them in their same respective cylinders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this engraver tool, and I'm going to number each and every single one of the pistons to each and every single one of the cylinder. You can number them however you want, but usually I'm going to renumber them as 1, 3, 5, 7 for the driver's side, and 2, 4, 6, 8 for the passenger side. All right, now I'm going to turn the motor over so we can start taking our pistons and rods out. This, I would say, definitely loosen by hand. I would not use a power tool at all to crack these loose, because I want to feel if they are damaged or compromised at all. Cool thing about this socket wrench is, it kind of turns into a speed wrench. Now that I got that rod cap loose, I'm going to push down on the rod. I'll remove this other cap, but I'm going to note that this cap went to this cylinder and then that other cap went to that cylinder, because you won't be able to mix and match those rod caps. You do not want to get those mixed up. So now to get these pistons out, I'm going to stick this mallet down here on the bottom of the rod, and I'm going to place my hand down here because this cylinder is going to fall out, or this piston is going to fall out. So I'll just tap with the mallet like so, and voila, there's our piston and rod. Now this piston right here came with this rod set. Now realistically, what I should have done is engraved and numbered these before I even pulled these out, but I wanted to pull this out to show you this setup, but I'll go ahead and engrave the rod cap to its respectable piston. So this was piston number 1. Now I'll do the same thing to our other piston here. Make sure it doesn't fall on the ground. Also too, guys, I want to let you know that these rod caps are cracked rod caps, meaning when they made these, they made them as one piece and then they crack them to split them. So you can't put it this way, because as you can see how it doesn't fit, but then when you put it this way, it fits perfect, right? So kind of be sure to not get those mixed up. Now that our pistons and rods are out of the engine, we can go ahead and start getting the crankshaft out. But I can't take the crankshaft out yet because our rear cover is still in the engine. I'm going to have to remove that. So I'm going to take a screwdriver, and there's a little section behind here that I can ever so slightly pry that will not harm the sealing surface of the rear cover. Now that little section where you can pry is right here and right here. So I'll start by undoing the 10mm sides. Now again, guys, you could probably crack these loose with power tools, but me personally, I like breaking these loose by hand. Now I'll start loosening the 13mm bolts on the main caps. Now I'll start loosening the 15mm bolts. Now that we got all of our main cap bolts removed from the main caps, we can go ahead and remove the main caps. The main caps are actually a little bit tricky. We're gonna need 2 long 3/8 extensions, and the way to remove a main cap is you stick one on this side, the other on this side, and you can kind of do a little bit of a gentle wiggle motion, and it will release the main cap. I'm going to do the same with the number 2 cap. Gentle wiggle while kind of lifting up at the same time. Now it's loose. Number 3 is usually the toughest because the bearing has a surface on each side that you see here. So if you saw that it didn't wiggle as much, that's why. Because as you can see when you look at number 2 and number 3, they got 2 different style bearings. Now that we got all of our main caps removed, we can remove the crankshaft. I'm gonna grab here, and I'm gonna grab here. This is very, very heavy, so be very careful. Now that our crank is out, we can go ahead and remove these crankshaft bearings. These bearings are actually in not bad shape. If this was a race motor, I would definitely be detailing exactly where these go. I'd be numbering them and all that stuff, but for a simple rebuild like this, I'm not too concerned. Lastly, we're gonna go ahead and remove the cam bearings. So we need a tool like this guy that you see here. I'll also leave a link in the description to where you can find one of these, and we're gonna remove the camshaft bearings. There's one. There's 2. There's 3. And then there's 5. All right, there you guys have it. One 5.3 liter truck engine completely torn down. As you can see, all the parts are on the table now. Now I can go ahead and I can inspect the block and the parts individually. Once I know the block is good to go, I can take it to the machine shop. They can do their magic on it. Once it's done, I can get the block back and we can go ahead and start the engine assembly on this engine. My buddy is going to be super happy. This thing is going to be going in a lowrider. Might even put a little bit of a cam in it. We'll see. But hopefully you guys learned something. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again for watching. If you could like and subscribe again, that would definitely help my channel and encourage me to do more stuff like this. So if you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and subscribe. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Thanks again for watching. Latest.